Feels like the offseason has truly begun. Been over a week now since the last game of the World Series. Got the GM meetings, heard from A.J. Preller, got an extension from Mike Shildt, like real concrete offseason things to talk about. Derek Togerson, we are excited to do that on this episode of the On Friar podcast. Derek enjoyed his Halloween off a week ago, back with us. How are you, man?
I wish I was doing Halloween again. Had a lot of fun chasing kids up and down the street in the Michael Myers outfit. But no, it's good to be able to talk baseball again.
You strike me as the type of guy that goes all in for a holiday like Halloween.
Yes. No question. It's literally like a movie grade mask. Like, okay, 2018, the Halloween film that just came out, Universal's Pictures, by the way, go out and check it out. Start the trilogy. The people who made that mask took the mold and mass produced it. So I have like literally a movie caliber Michael Myers mask with like the blue overalls and the whole. It's a creepy sight. So it's very much fun to when trick or treaters come up to the door and teenagers start mouthing off to chase them because they turn tail very quickly, and it's one of those like perverse little cool Halloween things.
None of this surprised me at all. And you're like an imposing guy. You're tall. You've got broad shoulders. You work out. Keep yourself in good shape. Like I wouldn't want somebody with your figure in a cinema grade Michael Myers mask chasing me around the neighborhood.
Well, the thing is not so much just the physicalness of it. It's I don't talk. Because Michael Myers doesn't talk, right? You have the whole thing with Loomis from the first movie back in 78 where he never said a word, yada yada. So when you just sit there and look at them and they try to converse with you and you just don't talk to them and to stare at them creepily, it's so unnerving for people. Like it's actually a great social and psychological experiment because when people can talk to you, they feel like they know where you're coming from. When you don't say anything, it's really, really spooky. That's the scariest part for people is when you just don't say anything because then they get really like, is this guy serious? It's pretty funny.
Is it hard for you to not talk because you're a guy that likes to you like to converse?
Sometimes, yes. Sometimes it is. Now, I will say this before you all think that I'm a complete monster. I'm only a partial monster. A lot of the younger kids, like under 10, they tend to get a little scared. So I walk over and give them a high five. Or something like, or take a picture, or like give them a fist bump or something. And that helps them to get over fear of not all creepy things that look creepy are actually creepy and going to hurt me.
It's very, very thoughtful of you. That will ease some of the nightmares and the fear a little bit later in the evening after the sugar rush dies down. Well, I'm glad you had a good time. Excited to be back and talking real Padres offseason things. First things first, thank you to On Friar, the sponsor of the On Friar podcast. Appreciate all they do for On Friar and the NBC7 Sports Wrap team. Tons of TVs, every location around San Diego County. Great place to watch football, college football Saturdays, NFL Sundays. Got the NBA, NHL popping off. So lots to watch. OG is a great place to do it. Fantastic beer list and an awesome menu that they're always updating. Tons of great specials. And so make sure to check out OG's next time you need a good meal. Want to go to a place to catch a ball game. OG's is the place to do it. Without further ado, the walk-up music. On Friar Podcast, brought to you by NBC7. He is Derek Togerson. I am Darnay Tripp on a week that brought some real concrete Padres offseason news and perhaps the least surprising bit of news of this Padres offseason. We knew after we heard from A.J. Preller after the season that a deal with Mike Shildt was probably on the way, and it was ironed out. What was it? Was it yesterday, Tuesday, Wednesday? Got that done. Yeah, 2-year extension. Shilty there through 2027. I don't know if you had a chance to listen to the Zoom, but I mean, real chummy between A.J. Preller and Mike Shildt, all smiles. Those two guys having a great time, and couldn't help but think, man, like, I don't know if we've seen A.J. Preller interact with a manager quite like he did with Mike Shildt on that Zoom. And those two guys seem committed to having a long-term partnership, and maybe there's a reason to be hopeful for that after the season that we had and just kind of the glimpse that we got with them two together, obviously in a very good mood, knowing that their partnership was ironclad beyond this season.
It was really cool during the playoffs. Shildt let us know in one of his many press availabilities that he and AJ were walking buddies. They would go out, and he's starting back in spring training. Before spring training, they would go out and they would just go for a walk. And they would talk to one another about what's the team need, what are the team's strengths, what do we have to do with this guy or with that guy, what's your philosophy on this, what's our draft look like, what's our minor league system, how many guys we have down there who might be able to help us this year versus in the future. They really do chat a lot. And that's something that Shildt has always prided himself on, is he's a communicator. He wants to know exactly where guys stand, and he wants to make sure the guys know exactly where he stands. So it makes perfect sense that he and AJ would get together and talk as much as they do. And when you have that many conversations, you're obviously going to have a better understanding of the other guy. Now, Mike Shildt also said, we don't always agree. And this is where I think Bob Melvin and AJ Preller had their differences, is when they didn't agree, they refused to see the other person's point of view. So when Shildt says they disagreed with AJ, he would still understand where they're coming from. And he said that AJ also understood where Shildt was coming from, so they could try and find that middle ground somewhere. And that is so important. It's like, Darnay, you and I are both happily married. You know about compromise. Like, let's say I want black and my wife wants white. We compromise and go with white. That's how a good relationship and a good marriage works. So that's probably what Shildt and AJ are like.
And AJ calling him Shildt. I don't know if I've heard that. That was cool. And Shildt saying, or was it? I can't remember. One of the guys said, "We've had some good fights." I think it was Shildt. We've had some good fights. We've had some good hugs after those fights. And so, talk about a marriage and a relationship. That's often how it works. You duke it out, you get through it, and then hug it out on the back end of the argument, and make sure everybody's like feeling good and you're moving forward aligned and feeling good about one another. And so the relationship seems healthy from that standpoint. And I asked AJ, I was like, I trying to be direct without being too direct. Like, what is it about this relationship that is better than your previous relationships? Right. Like, what is it about your time with Mike Shildt that makes you feel confident that this can be a long-term deal? And reading between the lines, it was, his answer seemed to suggest that like Mike Shildt is wired the same way that AJ is, where like, what do we know about AJ? AJ doesn't sleep. AJ's a baseball junkie, spends all day, all night thinking about his team, how they can improve, what they need to do. And it seems like Mike Shildt has that same energy. And he said, at the end of the year, the season obviously doesn't end when you wanted to. You wish you were playing. It's not like, okay, cool, see you in January. Like, Shildt wants to be involved, wants to have these conversations, wants to meet with the guys, all this stuff. And so it seems like Preller finally found a guy that is, we know
as addicted to the game as he is,
super passionate about it, addicted to it, just tireless in working and trying to fine tune. And, maybe that's just kind of what AJ needed all the time. Now you can have two people that have that work ethic, but directed differently. There seems to be enough of a shared vision that they put that effort, forward in such a way that, they're aligned in that sense. But I think there's probably some, with AJ Preller knowing that he's just going to be grinding about it all the time. If he's got a manager that's like, cool, I'm going to Cancun, I'll be in Arizona for a couple months, not necessarily in Peoria, I'm in vacation mode, don't bother me. That's probably going to grind on AJ Preller, and that clearly isn't the way Mike Shildt is wired.
Yeah, no, Shildt, as long as you got somebody who you're working with who is giving you effort and it might be a different kind of effort, it might be in a different way, but they are giving you all that they've got, you can work with that, right? When you got somebody that's like, I think that was part of the fallout between several of the other managers and AJ. It was just like, he needs somebody who he knows, even if it's not working, they are working. They are trying to do something. They're constantly thinking about it. Maybe not to the extent that he is, but they are working to do everything they can for the organization. And once he sees that, I think he respects that. And then they try to get on that same wavelength of how we're doing this. But he can trust that the other guy is actually putting in that work, trying to understand what all is happening. Because then when you have that, somebody is at least doing that legwork and giving you all they got behind the scenes, then it's easier to pull together, because you don't have to lay all the other groundwork. Fill them in on what's going on. What did they miss? That they're constantly staying in touch with you. So they're giving you that effort, and effort means a lot in any relationship.
Yeah, no doubt. And Shildt mentioned spending some time with Tatis, spending some time with Joe, the guys that are in town. AJ joked like, "Wish I was in San Diego right now instead of San Antonio." Give Shilty a hug and a chest bump and that sort of thing. But yeah, the work is being put in on both sides, which clearly means something to AJ Preller, and that's Shilt's background. That's how he worked his way up from the minors to becoming a successful major league manager. I think there's still a part of me that's like, okay, I need to see it, but and it's not necessarily like there's reason for concern. It's just the track record has been what it has been for AJ Preller, and so
year
I feel
two
like
is not as good as year one. That's how it has been since Andy Green.
Year two's been really has been rough, and so what happens if instead of them being 50-50, if they're 70-70? How does that impact those dynamics? Shildt now has a year where he's proven it. He's proven that he can do it. He went into year one saying, essentially, I'm at the mercy of the Padres and what they want to do because they've given me the second opportunity. Does he poke his chest out a little bit more? Like, I got them to 93 teams. I took a dysfunctional clubhouse. Look what I did. I delivered one of the best regular seasons in franchise history. So what impact do those have on the dynamics? Again, not saying that any of this is going to happen, but I think better now just being on that call with them, seeing the way they interact here and what I heard than I did previously. But there's still going to be that little part of me that's nagging. That's like, okay, before we really are sold on this being like a 10-year pact between these two, let's just get through year two.
I can see, I can see where that concern is there. It's a very valid point. I don't see that happening with Shilty because remember his background is, how many 2 decades plus in the minor leagues? Like, he has been through every single level, had every single job you can possibly have as a coach or manager of professional baseball. He knows where he came from and he knows where he is now. But then, like you, I have that little thought in the back of my head, but why did it end so poorly in St. Louis? Like, did he get to the point where he's like, hey, I've given you 2 straight 90-win seasons. I've taken you to the playoffs 3 straight years. I fixed the garbage that Mike Matheny had left you. Like, hey, what about me? We don't know if that, I don't think that's the case, but we don't know for sure. So there is that little bit of, maybe he'll start exerting his authority because he now has some leverage. Start taking that, maybe applying that a little bit more. Again, I don't think that's going to happen, but I certainly can't tell you for sure it's not.
Yeah. No, so that's good. That's got that buttoned up. I think, the next news that's probably going to come is, with relation to the coaching staff and Ruben Niebla and everything that we've heard now on these 2 Zooms with AJ Preller is they want to keep everybody together. They're working that direction. They obviously value Ruben Niebla. And so that seems to be kind of, if not the next step, one of the logical next steps. Get that all buttoned up, ironclad, so that we can just kind of move forward and keep everybody together. I think they value that continuity, and why not, given what we've seen from the results, and obviously when there's somebody like Ruben Niebla and Victor Rodriguez as well. I saw somebody on Twitter towards the end of the regular season, I forget who, basically saying like, maybe we found our hitting Niebla, and the results speak for themselves. And so it makes complete sense to kind of keep those guys around. And it seems like that's what they are motivated to do.
Well, Victor also, you just kind of watch him around the club, watch him pregame, watch the way he interacts with the guys. He very much has the same demeanor as Ruben Niebla, where he's very affable, but he also really knows what he's talking about. And guys listen to him because they want to listen to him because they trust what he has to say, which is very much like Ruben Niebla, also bilingual. He's really, really good at what he does. He proved that last year. I think it's a very apt comparison because even just in the way he walks around, got a smile on his face, can walk up and say hi to anybody. Guys come up and rap with him. It's not like, I remember watching the same thing with Ryan Flaherty the year before. It was very almost workmanlike. It was very kind of professional, kind of maybe, I don't want to say the word detached or anything like that. Like it was, or like there wasn't any passion there, because I'm sure there was, but it seemed more like mechanical. Whereas Victor will walk up to somebody and be like, hey, what's going on? Hey, well, how you feeling about that?
There's a warmth there that maybe doesn't exist with Ryan Flaherty.
Exactly. There's a warmth there in the way that he interacts with people and the way that he teaches hitting and approach. It was very different from years past.
Yeah. So stay tuned, because I'm sure we'll be hearing about that, hopefully sooner rather than later. Lauren in on the chat. And if you're watching
Lauren, what's up, man?
on YouTube. Get into the chat. Love having your questions and comments and having you be part of the podcast. Do you
We're
see the
live
podcast?
on YouTube right now, by the way, for you podcast listeners. Check it out whenever I'm sure Darnay, you tell people when we're going to be doing this. Hop on the YouTube and then interact, man.
Yeah, for sure. We love it. Lauren saying, do you see the Padres going into this offseason looking to cut more payroll like last year? Or do you think the team might try to add a little instead, Derek?
I'm going to go door number 3. I'm going to say they're going to try and keep it pretty close to where they are right now. They don't need to cut. There's no reason for that. And I don't think they want to. I don't think they have too much room to add, although I think they are certainly not opposed to that. I don't think they're looking to go out there and blow it out like they did, a couple of years ago. I think they're probably in a position where they want to keep it, fairly close to that competitive balance tax, which is right around, 20 million or so underneath. But I don't think they're going to be completely opposed to adding more if they need to. Now, what I don't know is would they be willing to do that before the season, or will they try and reserve some of that space for the trade deadline, which is, they're always active around that time. So that's going to be the interesting part. We'll see how much they have underneath there after they go through all their arbitration and yada, yada, and all that good stuff. But I think they're probably going to try and keep it pretty close to where they are right now, because obviously it worked last year.
Yeah, no doubt. Looking at the CBT 241 in 2025, I think the question is, is their ceiling, below that or just above that? I don't think they're blowing by it by 20 million or anything like that.
Right.
Are they willing to kind of dip their feet beyond that 241 number? As AJ always says, got to be the right person, right situation. Is there enough flexibility for them to extend beyond that? Or do you look at 249.99 as like, that's our max?
Well, as AJ also says, we're here to win. And our first priority is to win. And what he says about ownership is, even again, after the untimely passing of Peter Seidler, ownership will still tell them, hey, if you've got a chance, go do what you got to do. And I think AJ also says he's going to be responsible about that. So it's not go out there and sign another $30 million a year guy, or go out there and trade for somebody who's got, a Mike Trout contract, because that's just not responsible. But he will, I think, have the ability to do something beyond that. Man, you and I are having this conversation the other day in the newsroom about Eric Kutsenda, because we really don't know much about him. He doesn't talk that much. He's around the team every now and again, or at least I'm sure he's around the team a lot more than we see him on the field or in the clubhouse. Certainly not nearly as much as Peter was. But he seems like a guy who, I'm not sure if he is the bottom line keeper of this is your number, go hit it, you're not getting a cent more than that. Or if he's the guy who says, all right, guys, this is what the finances look like right now. This is where we can go. This is where we might be able to get above or a little below, and just kind of here are your parameters. Now go do your baseball thing and figure it out, with Eric Grupner involved as well and A.J. Preller. I think it's probably the latter, where he's like, this is where we are. This is what we can possibly get to. This is where we would like to stick around, but if we have a chance to get to a World Series, go ahead and blow past it. I think he's this is the ladder you're working on. Just don't go over the top rung kind of guy.
Yeah. It makes me think of, is it like the Fangraphs projections where they give you an idea of what a number of a player's going to do, but there's that wiggle room. There's also a 10% chance of him doing this, a 10% chance of him doing that, above and below. And you're probably right in putting it that way, where this is a neighborhood we want to live in, but there's also this zone here where, I think probably more above than below, where we will consider going into that area if it makes sense, and if we feel like it's going to give us a chance to be a World Series contending team.
We can give you Rancho Santa Fe. We can't give you Beverly Hills.
Yeah, which makes perfect sense. And that's, again, of all the unknowns, probably one of the biggest that, will. I think we knew like they were going to be cutting costs last year. To what degree, I don't know. And then like what impact does a successful season where they do cut costs have on kind of their approach and their mindset and what they feel like they can accomplish? It makes me think of, AJ Cassavell wrote about this, I believe this past week at the GM meetings. And it made me think of a conversation I had with Kyle Glazer going into last year. Where I was like, okay, so, baseball is such where it's not always, especially coming off of 2023, where the Mets, Yankees, and the Padres spent the most in all sucked.
All 82 win teams, yeah, or the Mets were below that.
Baseball is such that there's not a direct correlation between what you spend and how you do, but there's got to be some sort of general idea of like, if you're in this neighborhood, it gives you a pretty good. And the way Kyle said it was like top 10 teams in payroll, you're generally looking at a contending roster, a postseason, potentially World Series contending roster. Top 15, you have a chance. But if you're in the bottom 15, you basically don't have any chance. And maybe a simplistic
the Rays of the Guardians for some reason.
Yeah, and there's always going to be exceptions, but that was informative for me, just to be like, okay, as we're talking about these things, if you're in the top 10, like, you can probably feel good about what you can do if the players are right, the pieces fit. I think the Padres ended up 15th, so they're at the edge of that, and they were the best team in baseball the last second half of the year. And so I found that helpful, just to kind of gauge, like, okay, you're probably not going to be top 3, you're probably not going to be top 5, but as we've seen, as long as you're top 10, top 15, you're going to give yourself a chance.
But when was the last time the team with the number 1 payroll in baseball won the World Series? I mean, the Dodgers are always there. They were not number 1 this year. The Mets still were, and the Mets went to the National League Championship Series. Honestly, I haven't looked this up. When was the last time the team that had the highest payroll in baseball won the World Series? I'm sure it has happened. I just couldn't mean to tell you the last time it was. Now, I guarantee you the vast majority of teams that have won it have been in the top 12, would be my guess, in the free agency era, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, now I'm looking at it, but this is going to take too long to figure out. But I mean, it's an interesting conversation to have, certainly, and kind of one of the big unknowns. From like a player, a rumor, a free agency trade standpoint, like, obviously Profar and Kim continue to be big. I guess in the last week since we've done this, they didn't extend qualifying offer. Kim, obviously, maybe it was 2 weeks ago was it last week or 2 weeks ago with Kim? It must have been last week. Declines his half of the mutual option. And so, those are the two kind of biggest top of mind questions now for the Padres going forward. And I feel like, especially with Kim, as he makes that decision, which you figured he would, especially being a Boris client, apparently the Giants are very interested. Brewers might be interested. Feels like the market's going to be enough for Kim that it's hard to picture him sticking around.
He's gone. Yeah, Kim. Yeah, let's just go ahead and just rip the Band-Aid off right now. Kimmy's gone. He's going to get a nice big contract from somebody. The Giants have needed a shortstop for a while. They probably don't want to go full in on Willy Adames, because he's going to price them out of trying to go after Juan Soto. They could probably get Kim a little bit cheaper and still have plenty of production. I mean, Ha-Seong Kim he got him down ballot MVP votes in 2023. Like, he's a really, really good ball player, as we know in San Diego. I don't have to tell you any of this. The Giants really need him. But also, if Adames does sign somewhere else, the Brewers really need him too. They need to find somebody just to tell their fan base we haven't completely punted on the shortstop position. So I see them being in on Kimmy as well. Now, whether or not he's going to be one of those first guys off the board, with Boris, I just don't see it. I know it's close. It's there. People talking to him. They want to get it done. But Scott takes all of his guys deep into free agency. He has no reason to have his guy set the market only to have it then topped by somebody else. That's not Boris's MO. That's not how he does things. So I would honestly be shocked if Ha-Seong Kim is signed before maybe 2 or 3 other shortstops go off the board, and certainly not until after Adames goes off the board.
Yeah. To answer your question, 2018 Red Sox, that was the last year that happened.
There you go.
And they beat the Dodgers, who were number 3. So there's your answer there. Yeah, I think it's just, it's going to cost too much money. Everybody loves Ha-Seong Kim. I think, defensively, obviously that's important. I think the bat comes and goes enough that I'm kind of okay with it. He did really good things for them in 2023. It seemed like he was kind of, steadily climbing from that standpoint. Obviously 2024, even before the injury, bit of a step back. And so I think that's where I feel a little bit comfortable for a team where offensively they were much better. But, if it's somebody that's going to cost you that much and maybe isn't providing just some real thump from that standpoint, I'm kind of okay with watching them go, even if it's a great clubhouse fit and a guy that's a fan favorite.
Yeah, and as AJ said, they missed Ha-Seong down the road or down the stretch. From a clubhouse standpoint, obviously they didn't miss him much from a production standpoint. They stayed LDS, and they're the only team in the postseason to truly challenge the Dodgers. So they've got holes. They got ways to fill the hole of him leaving.
And if you're looking at it as Kim and Profar, and you have, losing Kim, you're kind of thinning out this confusing, the glut of shortstops that they have and middle infielders. It clears that up a little bit. Whether or not you're comfortable with Xander Bogaerts as your everyday shortstop, different conversation. But the pieces that we saw second half of the season down the stretch, those are kind of in place. Obviously, you don't have that with outfielders, and thank goodness that David Peralta was who he was. Thank goodness that Jackson Merrill had the kind of year that he did. But it's much easier for me to see a shortstop walk away than to see a productive left fielder walk away. But then they're going to have to make the money work with Profar as well. And if somebody says, "Hey, we like you, we believe in you, we think you can replicate what you did for 3 years, 45 million, then it's going to be incumbent on the Padres to decide if they like that price tag and where that fits in with what we just talked about, kind of the overall payroll.
And 15 sounds like it's a little bit on the high end for Pro, but I wouldn't mind going to that for him. We've kind of been sitting here like 12 to 13 a year because
I think I'm on the lower end than you are. I'm on the lower end than you are.
It works so well. It works so well here, and he deserves that. He's earned that. And oh, by the way, if you look at the underlying metrics with him, this was not a fluke season. Like, he made real changes to the way he approaches the game. He's making harder contact. He's making more consistent contact. He's barreling balls at a higher percentage. And he told me early in the year, he's changed the way that he approaches every at-bat, where this year he didn't give away a single at-bat. He said before in the year, it's a long season, man. You go up there sometimes, you just don't have it, and you can give away some at-bats and get into a rut that way. He said this year he's staying competitive, making every single at-bat competitive. So he's now basically not taking any break over the long season. He is staying intense, and he is staying involved and locked in every pitch of every at bat. And now you're seeing the talent that he's always had coming out on a more consistent basis. So he made a fundamental change in approach and the way that he does things. And I think if he should be able to keep that for the duration of his career. So I think this was not a fluke by any stretch of the imagination. I think this is the real Jurickson Profar now for 2, 3, 4 more years as he's still in his physical prime.
Yeah, and just looking at some of those underlying numbers that you mentioned, expected batting average up nearly 40 points from a year ago, and the highest of his career. Expected slug up 99 points, highest of his career.
Not too shabby.
Expected weighted on base 364, highest of his career by 30, close to 30 points. Hard hit rate up 13%, K rate down to about his career average. It was a tick up last year, and walk rate above his career average, a couple points higher than it was last year. So that, like you said, that all bodes very well.
Yeah, it's a fundamental change in approach, fundamental change in philosophy. And if you change your philosophy and it works for you, the odds are people stick with that philosophy.
Yeah. Outside of those guys, did you see the Brewers situation with Devin Williams?
Yeah, but they're thinking about trading that guy.
They did extend him the team option, which was for
they declined the team option because he's got another year of arbitration.
The team option was like 10-6 or something like that. His arbitration figure is closer to like 8.5. So Brewers, being the Brewers, any opportunity to save a couple $1 million at the expense of goodwill with one of your star players, Milwaukee's always going to sign up for that. So
this is on brand for them. They traded Josh Hader early. They traded Corbin Burns early. This is what they do with their star pitchers.
Yeah, and A.J. Cassavell again wrote about this, and interesting situation there. Again, like you mentioned, the track record, and then also like, okay, does this mean a trade is coming? And as we saw with Luis Ariz and Dylan Cease, now those guys had that extra year. I believe this is Devin Williams. He's going into his last year of team control. He has a free agent after 2025. But maybe they're looking at it where, one of these playoff type contenders in late July, early August, they decide they need a closer or a reliever of his ilk. Are you going to get a little bit more from a team in that situation than a team that's maybe just hoping at this stage? Just like you would have gotten way more for Dylan Cease and Luis Ariz at the deadline than they did early on the season or before the season. Again, a little bit different because they had the extra year team control, but it seems like that's kind of the dialogue that Milwaukee's having. And from Williams' standpoint, he's probably like, well, I'm done here within a year anyway, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah. That is Milwaukee put themselves in this position by doing that because now everybody knows that he's gone. So that lowers the price a little bit. What you do now is you are weighing over the offseason, you've got a guy for the whole year, and that you're going to put him in your system. You're going to see exactly how he likes to be used. You're going to get him ingratiated with the teammates. You're going to get him just get a physical done early, get to see how he does physically. There are a lot of benefits to doing this during the offseason. Now, when you do it at the deadline, also, you're now getting only 3 months. You're getting August, September, 2 months, August, September, and hopefully October with this guy. So while a team might get desperate because they have a need at closer because somebody got hurt, you're still probably not going to get the same kind of prospect package for 2 months as you would for 6 months. Unless that team is like, we are a closer away. We're number 1 seed in the National League, and we just lost our guy. We just get this dude. We're right back. We're a World Series contender. We know it. Then you got to overpay a little bit. So now the Brewers basically have to ask themselves, okay, do we want to risk that? I mean, he did get hurt last year. So that if he gets hurt again this year, maybe that certainly lowers the price again. So can we, on a healthy, coming off a great end of the season, Devin Williams, can we get more for him now? Or should we wait, hang on, hope he continues to be Devin Williams, hope he doesn't get hurt, and then somebody comes calling in desperation mode at the deadline? That's a bit more of a gamble. I would do it in the offseason if I was them.
Yeah. Now, crazy idea. Is a team like this potentially like a trade option for a Dylan Cease deal where you've got 2 players going into their final year? Dylan Cease is going to demand way more than Devin Williams. Devin Williams could be a really, really useful player on a 12, 15 million a year deal. I don't know what that would look like, but more cost effective. Could you give up a Cease, get maybe Devin Williams plus, where you're looking and with the intent of locking him down long term, but that long term commitment, it's not a starter, one of the best relievers in the game, and you're not spending quite as much money. And could you throw in another piece, whether it's an outfielder, whether it's maybe a depth arm for the rotation, what have you, to kind of round out the roster a little bit? Not saying they should, but when you're talking, that idea kind of blipped into my mind.
I can see it making sense, especially because you've got Cease for basically 1 more year, and both teams benefit somehow. However it may be. I have a hard time parting with a guy like Cease even for 1 season because we've seen the stuff. We've seen what he can do. Starting pitchers are so much more difficult to come by at the deadline than relievers are. If you end up, you deal Cease, okay, then what, you go sign a Luis Severino, whatever it is, somebody you don't know what you're getting. Maybe it costs you a little bit less, but you don't need the injury history, whatever it is. And then let's say you're still looking for that other starting pitcher. You got to fill 2 holes in the rotation now. Cease's hole plus the next one you were going to add anyway. Where do you find that at the deadline? It's really, really, really hard to find a dude like that at the deadline where you can find Tanner Scotts and Jason Adams and Edwin Williams is at the deadline pretty much every year. So I would be very hesitant to do that simply because of what Cease means to this rotation, especially if Joe Musgrove is still there, maybe we're talking about something here. But when you've got Darvish, King, Cease, and then you got to try and figure it out after that with some promising pieces for sure. But if you can you got 3 dudes who are horses you can pencil in at the top of that rotation, and that's a playoff caliber rotation, I would think long and hard, unless for some reason the Brewers are throwing somebody ridiculous at you on top of that. Certainly not Jackson Churio or anything like that, but another one of their top prospects, whatever it is.
Yeah. Okay. What about instead of Dylan Cease, Luis Ariz?
Oh God, no. Because you can re-sign him to a long-term deal. He's not going to break the bank.
Okay.
He's not. Plus I love that dude. I love his attitude. He's just a happy, chipper guy. He just look what happened to that line. I would say he's even more important to the Padres' success than Dylan Cease is, because when you inserted him at the top of that lineup, the entire offense changed. He is that table setter. He's always on base. He's always putting pressure on defenses. He's such a great addition to the top of that lineup that has so much pop to it. It makes it so much longer. He always finds a way to do the right thing. I mean, the dude, like I said, he had a torn thumb ligament and won a batting title. Like look what he's going to do next year when he's fully healthy. It's crazy to think about just how good that dude is at the top of any lineup. And I want him in this lineup because guys like that are incredible. They're even more difficult to find than quality starting pitchers are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And don't say Michael King next, Darnay.
No, I'm not saying Michael King. I just, I thought it was an interesting thought exercise, and just considering like what would a deal for a Devin Williams look like, and is, are the pieces there that it would make sense? And everything you say about both those guys makes perfect sense. But like I said, kind of a crazy idea out of left field that popped into mind when you were talking. What do you make sense of the Rays' interest in Juan Soto?
I don't. No, I don't. I don't. Did they somehow get the Wander Franco contract voided where they have all this money laying around? I haven't seen that, if that's true or not. Do they have a stadium they can play in? Do they have, is there a new stadium being built there? How is that? What is the stadium situation in Tampa right now?
I don't know. I do not.
I haven't even looked.
Don't know.
Yeah. I haven't even looked. I don't know how that got out there. I don't know. I'm assuming it's not true. I'm assuming somebody somehow floated that, where somebody from the Rays is like, God, we got to give these people, our fan base, something happy. Hey, we're going to try to get Juan Soto, because they know they're not going to do it. Mm-hmm. But you put it out there, you say, hey, we're talking to Scott. I'm not sure a Boris Client has ever signed with the Rays. I'd have to look that up. But you start getting your fan base excited a little bit, and then inevitably, when somebody gives them $500 million, you go, hey, well, shoot, man. I mean, how many teams can possibly do that? If you people would come out to the ballpark more often, we'd have more money. We can go sign a Juan Soto. So it's on you fans to go and do this. Don't get mad at us. You're not coming to see us. And we've been a good team for a decade. Yeah. It's almost like a political ad to me, where it's just, they're just throwing this crap against the wall to see if it sticks. And I don't see it being true in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, that'd be a shocker. I mean, I don't know, I think from one standpoint, anybody that's going to pony up the money, like he'll listen.
Which he said as much. And right after the World Series ended, he said, somebody asked him, well, do the Yankees have an advantage on re-signing you, given the fact you had your best year here, you got Judge, and he's like, no, they don't have an advantage. I mean, literally, no, I'm not shutting the door to anybody. I'll listen to all 30 teams. Yeah. And as we know, having dealt with Juan Soto, if the White Sox came to him with the highest bid, he'll go play for the White Sox.
I think, him being close to home, obviously Florida, Dominican Republic, maybe that means something. Obviously, New York's got a considerable Dominican population. So if it's the Yankees, it's the Mets. I mean, I think common wisdom would suggest it's one of those two. I think the Dodgers saying that they're moving Mookie into the infield then kind of got on people's radar. Like, well, that means they could use a corner outfielder. And obviously they seem to always have the money for it. So, is that a hint of what could possibly come or of how
that would aggressive? Be awesome. I would love it if the Dodgers signed Juan Soto. That dude poisons every clubhouse he goes into. That would be great.
He didn't seem to poison the Yankees.
Did they win?
That's true. They made
the American League was down this year.
What's that?
The American League was down this year. Oh, by the way, Aaron Judge is the man in New York. So Soto could just go in there and just be a guy, and obviously not help him get there, but not help him get over the hump. Now in LA, you've got Mookie and Freddie, and the guys. Like, Soto would have to go in there and just be him. But I don't see him fitting in with that clubhouse chemistry. I just don't see it.
I found myself, maybe just seeing the way the playoffs played out. He obviously had the huge homer against the Guardians, but we just saw $700 million contract Soto, you're talking about like the potential of 6+. I just like, I don't know. Like, you got to be a specific kind of guy for me to want to shell out that kind of money. And I think
Mhm.
like the average is somewhere in the what 40-50 million dollar range, depending. I mean, it's like 12, 15. I don't know what it would look like, but I just don't know if, and having had the Juan Soto experience for a season plus, having been there, I don't know how excited I'd be to give that guy $50 million a year. Now, the Juan Soto we saw in New York is a different kind of Juan Soto than what we saw in San Diego. But even still, watching a series with Shohei Ohtani and a postseason with Shohei Ohtani, the fear factor, the terror, like the
Mhm.
fact that he would like the anticipatory anxiety that you had when you got to 7, 8, 9 because you wanted to get out of that inning with nobody on for him. Did we ever feel that with Juan Soto and the Padres?
No, you had
Never.
to turn a triple play at the end of a game to get in the playoffs to avoid Ohtani. Like that was how desperate the Padres. Let's just turn a triple play. We had to avoid this guy.
I find myself, and like, I don't know, I'm not one to rag on these guys or, whatever. I just don't, and I could very easily, I think all very easily see a situation where Boris Client, like you said, takes him as deep as possible to maximize the value that they get on the open market. He signs in late February, early mid March, whatever it is, and then has a 612 OPS in mid June.
Mhm.
100% can see that after a weird off season, get used to new environments. Maybe he's got some weird thing in his swing like he did the first month or two of 2023. And then the whole fan base is like, we gave this guy $620 million and he's hitting 243 with a 612 OPS. What on earth did we just do?
Yeah, and most of that's because he's got 49 walks right in the first month. No, I don't get you see all the reports. He's asking for a solid 700 million, right? Meaning 700 million and no deferred money. If he and Scott Boras think they're getting anywhere close to that, they're out of their minds because he's not worth that. Okay, Aaron Judge, Soto was not the best player on his team in New York. That's Aaron Judge. Judge got what, 365? So you're telling me you're looking for double, twice what Aaron freaking Judge got. No. And the only reason the Shohei Ohtani is worth that kind of money is because he pitches too. Now, granted, he didn't this
Yeah.
year, but offensively, he's Aaron Judge. Okay. 365.
Yeah.
On the mound, if you look at his numbers, and I've said this, I think, on this podcast before, he's Garrett Cole, which is 326. You put those together, it's 691, throwing 9 million more. Okay, great. But also, the Dodgers are making money on this because he's deferring so much of it, and they sell $24 billion worth of merchandise in Japan. He's there. He is such an international, massive superstar that he will help you make that money back. Juan Soto's not that. No, but kids aren't running around all over the world wearing Juan Soto gear like they are Shohei Ohtani gear. It's just not the same thing. So no team is ever going to give Juan Soto $700 million to be a one-dimensional player. Now, that one dimension is phenomenal. Offensively, he's one of the greatest we've seen in the last 50 years. But he doesn't play defense, and he's not a great clubhouse guy, and he still is not as good even as the best player on his own team, who was Aaron Judge. When I heard that, it blew my mind that they would have the gall to say, yeah, we're looking for 700 million. Okay, well, good luck. If you're looking for 700 million over the next 30 years, sure, we'll give you that because you're going to cut it down to God knows how much. But no, he's not worth it. There's literally the only player on earth who's worth that is Shohei Ohtani, and nobody else should be maybe over 420. It just does not work.
Yeah, and there's pitching. He also stole over 50 bases.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's something to be said, and this is again simplistic. You're having to sell this to fans as well, and so this is like not the baseball nerd conversation, but like there's something about like Shohei Ohtani looks like an action figure. Aaron Judge looks like an action figure. Fernando Tatis Jr. looks like an action figure, moves like an action figure. There's something about that element of it where like this is a physical specimen. Juan Soto's keeps himself in very good shape,
Yeah.
but nobody's like, what a freak athlete, what an imposing figure that Juan Soto is. And then just in terms of like that fear factor, like, you know, Juan Soto's career per 162 home run average is 35. That's great. Aaron Judge's is 51. Like that means something. That fear, like anytime he steps up to the plate, sure, Juan Soto could hit a home run, but you're worried about Aaron Judge hitting a homer. You're worried about Shohei Ohtani. In 2021, you're worried about Fernando Tatis Jr. going yard.
Mhm.
Mike Trout, these guys, Kyle friggin' Schwarber. He's not
Yeah.
a 400 million. You're worried from the very first pitch of the game that
Mhm.
Schwarber's gonna put one top tank. Juan Soto has that ability, but there's not that same type of fear factor that like as a fan of a baseball team, again, this is not the analytics conversation. This isn't the baseball insiders conversation. This is just like, you got to get the fans excited about it. They certainly will be. But there's also the potential where you're selling this guy on like, oh, he's, on base is really, really good. He's
Yeah.
going to go through some stretches where he maybe has a 4 homer month, but like, trust us on this guy, like generational talent, like different type. You don't have to sell me on anything. I just look at Shohei Ohtani. I just look at Aaron Judge. I see Kyle Schwarber's track record. I look at Fernando Tatis Jr. Like, these guys are freaks. And Juan Soto's crazy skilled, but I just don't know if like maybe it's because we've lived it. I'm just kind of like, you spend that 650. I don't know if I really want any part of that.
Yeah. Well, Bryce Harper, another guy who,
Yeah.
that dude's lurking in the on deck circle. You're like, damn it. Okay, it changes the way that you deal with it, because you know that Bryce Harper at any given moment is a big moment player where he'll go outside the strike zone and he will still hit a home run. Juan Soto, you're like, oh, let's walk him. He'll take his walk. We'll nibble around, whatever, make it look like we're trying. He's not going to hurt you because he'll take his walk. He doesn't scare you because he just wants to get on base. Now, if you hang one, he'll hurt you. Yes. But it's not the same where it's like Ohtani, throw a fastball a couple inches above the strike zone. Juan Soto's taking that. Ohtani's like, I was looking for that. Y'all made a mistake. Bye-bye. Because he will go outside the zone to try and help his team out in a big moment. Mookie Betts is that way. But you're right. Soto was like, I'm going to do my thing, and I'm not going to deviate from my plan, and that can actually work against him in the biggest moments in games.
So I'm glad, I'm not the only person that feels this way, because I was just like watching things play out. Like,
you have a great take there.
I don't know, a good, really, really good player, but $600 million.
No, he's not. No. You go above 450. The only man on earth that's worth that is Shohei Ohtani, and he might just $700 million. He might be underpaid, just because of how much money he makes that ball club. Obviously, he's there for 1 year. They get over the hump and win the World Series. And by the way, he's going to pitch next year. Good Lord.
Yeah. Anything else? Got a few minutes before we wind down. Any questions? I don't know if you've started looking at free agents. I looked at ESPN had the top 50, started scrolling down that, saw some names. I was like, oh, I always find myself a little bit curious about a Jock Peterson. Christian Walker had a nice season, first base. I'm always looking for.
Now, Christian Walker, Jock Peterson he's a bench guy. He's a good dude to bring around, and instant offense, left-handed bat off the bench, can play a corner outfield. Christian Walker has been probably one of the most underrated players in the game for the last 5 years. He's really, and we've seen it here at Petco Park, he's really, really good. So now he got the qualifying offer, right?
I was just pulling this up. So let me see if I can find it. I don't recall.
I think he did, but don't quote me on that. But he's a dude who you just pencil him in for 30 bombs every year. He's going to play really good Gold Glove caliber first base. He's a great clubhouse guy. He's just one of those guys who just goes about his business and is he's like a metronome. He's just so consistent that you don't realize he's putting up these numbers. Till the end of the year, you look up and he's got all these numbers. That's a dude I'd take on my team in a heartbeat.
Yeah. Let me log into this real quick, and we can just go out with.
While you're looking at that, let me throw this name at you. How much would you be willing to give Paul Goldschmidt on a flyer at the age of 37?
Another guy that was on the list that I thought, that could be intriguing. I would, and I don't know. The ESPN piece had some projections. I think Goldschmidt was somewhere in the teens. And I could probably be convinced of that. I'd need to dig in a little bit. You talk about the underlying numbers, that sort of thing. Like, what do we take from the 2024 season that he had, and how much concern is there now going forward? But not long ago, we were looking at a MVP candidate, MVP winner, right?
2022, yeah, when Manny was a finalist.
And so, that gives me a little bit of excitement. And then that first base spot, with you're looking at a rise. What happens with Jake Cronenworth? Does he slide into second full time?
Well, yeah, that's what if you get a guy like Goldschmidt, you got a rise Goldschmidt, first base DH platoon. Jake goes to second base where he's actually got value with that contract, and you're off and running.
What happens with Donovan Solano? Like, what does it mean for him? So that's, now looking at this list, you've talked about Pete Alonso, but at a projected contract of about 27 per, can you make the math work there? Probably not.
That's not good. No, he loves San Diego. He's been on the record saying he loves playing in San Diego. I think he would come here in a heartbeat. I just don't think the Padres will go after him because he's earned a contract that is too big than what they can give. Unless, again, he's getting close to 30 years old, something like that.
Yeah.
He's right in the middle of his prime. If he'll take one of those 10, 12-year deals where you can stretch out the average annual value, maybe with a few opt-outs in there, maybe it would work. It would also depend on how much he actually wants to come to San Diego. But could you imagine Arise, Tatis, Merrill, Machado, Alonso? Like, woof.
That would scare you. I'll just hit you rapid fire with some names as I scroll down the list. Kylie McDaniel, I think I have that name right, for ESPN top 50 free agents. Christian Walker, number 16, 3 years, 57, so 19 per, entering his 34-year-old season. Shane Bieber's on the list right behind him. You mentioned Bieber last time. 3 years, 54.
Really think someone say 3 years and 54 for a guy coming off of Tommy John surgery? He's not going to be there until middle of the year.
Yeah, 29 years old, so still. Walker Buehler, same kind of neighborhood there, right behind him on that list.
Well, he won himself a lot of money in that World Series, didn't he? Good gravy.
Tyler O'Neill is an interesting one. 3 years, 50. A guy that could provide some slump, or some slug, some thump.
Good
strikeouts.
Dude, too.
Yeah, strikeouts, like, it's going to be a give or take. But if you're looking for like a maybe a Schwarber-esque, guy that's got some kind of boom or bust, you know what I mean? Thinking big swing, or, we'll see what happens. But, that's, and filling out an outfield spot, 29 years old, 17 per, like, I could probably be convinced of that.
If he's healthy, I mean, we saw when he was in St. Louis, he came here. I mean, when he's healthy, that dude hits the ball very, very hard. Yeah. He plays hard. He's put together, dude, too. That guy can win a Mr. Olympia contest. So he's a dude who, again, if he just can stay healthy, and that's the rub. He's only played 100+ games, twice in the last 6 years, something like that. Take away the COVID season, of course. But man, he was great last year with the Red Sox and still only played like 113, 114 games and hit 31 bombs in those games. So that's a dude, if healthy, again, take him on my team in a heartbeat. And at that number, he's probably well worth that. Again, it's the injury thing that just scares the hell out of you.
Kirby Yates reunion, 2 years, 24 million, coming off a strong 2024.
Is he okay with not closing again?
It's a good question.
We love Kirby here.
Yeah.
We love Kirby here. That's now 24 for a setup guy, maybe a little too rich for our blood.
They got Goldie at 1 year, 18 mil. He's 37 years old.
He'll probably get that somewhere else.
Yeah. Let's see.
I'd be okay with giving him. God, here's the thing: at 37, it's hard to sign yourself a prove it deal. And I don't want to get burned like we did with Nelson Cruz and Matt Carpenter. And you're right. If you look at the underlying metrics with Goldschmidt, it was not good this year. So as Rocky Balboa said, Father Time's undefeated. So if you're going to do something for a guy like that, you got to think long and hard about going into 10 figures.
32-year-old
into 8 figures.
Yeah.
Seven you can live with.
32-year-old Michael Conforto, 1 year, 15 million projected contract.
No.
Jock Peterson, 1 year, 15, 32 years old.
Too much for a guy who's probably going to be a bench rotational guy.
Yeah.
Would he take 9? Sure.
Yeah. Spencer Turnbull, 32 years old, 2 years, 13 million.
Getting closer. Yeah. I mean, is it
getting with Ruben Yebla?
He's a dude. Yeah, he's a dude who can maybe that's where I think the Padres are going to start looking at. Where are these reclamation projects? These guys.
Oh, I got one for you. I got one for you. Yohan Moncada.
Oh, damn.
1 year, 12 and a half. 29 years old. 3.7 WAR in 2021. Lots of potential. White Sox declined a $25 million club option. Shocker.
Yeah. Now he could be just get me the hell out of the south side of Chicago, and goes, he was that dude, man. He was that like can't miss prospect, and he has had some moments, couple good years, but he certainly has not lived up to that. I could see it. I could see it. Infielder, can put him at second base. I'm not mad at it.
Yeah. That's probably the last, maybe we can dig into the list a little bit more in a future episode, but I had that in mind, bunch of names. So there's some interesting prospects, and while top end in the outfield, but it's not like the Padres would be paying for a top end guy, but there seems to be like corner infielder, meaning first base, corner outfielder, like some types that could, potentially come in and be useful.
Well, the catcher, we got to find catchers. You have to address that position. And was Kyle Higashioka on that top 50?
That's a good question. Did I close that out?
Because that's the dude. I've
seen him, but he should be.
Yeah, he absolutely should be. It's because you have to have a catcher on there somewhere.
They did have some, yeah. I don't know if I saw Higashioka.
That's a dude who, if you're not going to try and swing a trade for somebody, and I couldn't begin to tell you right now who might be available, but Higgy works so well here. I mean, Michael King just speaks glowingly of the guy. All the pitchers love throwing to him. I just make kind of like Profar. It just makes too much sense to not bring Higgy back. I mean, come on. What are we doing here?
No, I think that's a must. Travis d'Arnaud is on the market as well.
Now there was an option there, right? Did he get cut loose from that?
I believe so. Yeah, that popped up. So I
think
that's
veteran guys got to let. Now that's a dude who late in the game will give you a real good at bat like Higgy will. He gets rave reviews from his teammates. I'd certainly take a look at that guy too.
Yeah. Let's see, what were the specifics of that? Yeah, had an $8 million club option declined.
So the Braves didn't think he was worth $8 million.
Well, they had Sean Murphy.
Right. He didn't hit for anything this year, as we saw that in the wild card series here.
Yeah, he'll be 36 before spring training, so the combined age of he and Higgy would be about 70.
But 71.
He'd be an interesting one. But I just think Higgy, and then what happens with Diaz, Campy, like either of those two, I feel okay with.
Camp is entering arbitration, so saw him projected like 1.7 somewhere in there. Diaz, I think good to do to kind of keep around as a depth piece. I like it. He's sure not going to break the bank for you. And as we saw in the All-Star game a couple of years ago, when he makes contact, he hits the ball extremely hard. He's got to work on making more contact.
Yeah, either of those two, knowing what's coming down the line in a year and a half.
See, that's another reason I like Higgy so much. Is because Ethan Salas is a guy who, as we know, he's going to have to grow physically. The tools, he's ready now. Mm-hmm. The mentality, he's ready now. He's 18 years old, and he's a taller kid. He's got to fill out, put some more bulk on just naturally to be able to handle the rigors of catching at the major league level every single day. I mean, Ivan Rodriguez is the last teenager to start behind a plate in a major league game in 1991. He was always short and stout. He was just built differently, like catchers are typically built. Ethan Salas looks like he could play point guard. I mean, he's tall and athletic, especially for a catcher. He's got to be able to fill out. So if you get Higgy in here for 2 years, he will have no problem fostering a young player and eventually turning that over at the end. He's wired like that. He's a team first guy. It's almost like it's too perfect.
Yeah. I think you got to keep Higgy around. This is a good chat. Covered a lot. I enjoyed this.
This is a nice one. Let's do this again
Real,
next week.
it's like a real off-season podcast. This is fun.
Full of information and wonderful takes and Halloween talk.
You guys have a good rest of your week. We'll see you next time.